Hello and welcome back to the Fields of Anfield Road podcast as we review Liverpool's 3-0 win against Manchester United this afternoon at Old Trafford. I am, as ever, your host, Annie Davis. With me today to review the game, I've brought with us from the other team, Man United, Man U fan and TalkSPORT's Toni Afoke. Tony, how are things?
It would have been better if we decided to win, but yeah, I'm good nevertheless.
Good to hear. And well, the game, in short review, was that we did win 3-0 at Old Trafford for just the third time in the last 13 years. 2 goals from Luis Diaz, as well as a goal from Mo Salah right at the end, who also had 2 assists to go along with his goal. So we'll start off with you, Tony. Was there anything in that game you could come away and think something was good out of that game, or was it just a complete disaster for Man U from start to finish? Or was there anything that you would maybe come away with it with a little bit of positivity?
I wouldn't say positivity. I think I'm going to look at this result with not as much negativity as everyone's going in, because unfortunately, this United have already lost the game this season. This was a kind of a must-win for Ten Hag in a sense because of the summer transfer window, the things happening behind the scenes, the decision to keep him. So this was a big one for Erik Ten Hag, and everyone's saying this year that they want to see style of play, stuff like that. Going towards the game, I would say like the first 2 Luis Diaz goals with Liverpool capitalising on the mistakes of Casemiro, really and truly. And we all saw from last season that Casemiro is not the same Casemiro we all once knew, but United have signed Manuel Ugarte to kind of replace him in a sense. But Ugarte is still not ready, as he's played majority of the Copa America, has not really had a pre-season. So that's why I wasn't in the team today. And It's an unfortunate one, because even if Man United lose, especially going into an international break, it's just the worst thing, because it's going to be so negative around the club. Everyone's going to be questioning Erik Ten Hag now, and it's going to be blown way out of proportion. I don't want to say there's positives to take out of the game, because there wasn't really that many positives, but I'm not going to look at it with such a negative lens going into the international break.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of one of those ones where losing so heavily, albeit, it is horrible to lose a 3-0 at home to your biggest rivals, but you'd almost rather lose, I think personally, I could be wrong on this, you may think differently, but I think I'd almost rather lose 3-0 or more goals, be outplayed, than lose by 1-0 by some sort of controversy by VAR or something like that happen. I'd always rather, if you're going to lose, you may as well lose and sort of almost have the mantra of, we were just not good enough. I think rather than if you lost 1-0 today, there was a dodgy refereeing decision. Like, Arsenal yesterday, drawing 1-1 with Brighton. I mean, the whole talk about that game has been about the decision to send Declan Rice off. And I think you'd almost rather just put it down to one of those days rather than have any sort of regrets. But at the same time, it is obviously never nice to lose 3-0 to your biggest rivals, granted. And it's just, I've had a few games before where, I remember the 5-0 Old Trafford a couple of years ago, and it was 3-0 with Suarez scored a couple of goals. No, Gerrard scored a couple of goals, almost scored a hat-trick. But that's one of the easiest I found, most comfortable I felt ever watching Liverpool play Man U, especially at Old Trafford.
Yeah, 100%. It was, I'm low-key regretting it now, but before the game, I was quite optimistic, because I thought, you know what, United are not going to feel the bad side. I've seen worse United teams go up against Liverpool. For example, last season we were playing people like Campbell in the defence, and even though you completely outplayed us both games, you came with a draw and a loss in the cup. So I was quite optimistic. But the first half, it wasn't too bad. Like, it wasn't. You had the Trent Alexander-Arnold disallowed goal. But then, other than that, like, it was a bit cagey. There was a time where Liverpool were on top, and then those 2 mistakes from Casemiro, and just capitalised on it. And then after, it looked quite simple for Liverpool, even though Man United didn't create much. It was, speaking from a United perspective, I can say we could probably, to make that team better, we can probably make 3 different changes. Maybe that's it. 3 different changes, in the sense that I would have started Ahmad. I was quite bemused, even though Garnacho is a great player. I was quite bemused that Garnacho started today. I thought Ahmad, if he's going to start, it'll be on the left for Rashford instead of for Ahmad, who just won our Player of the Month and somehow found himself on the bench. And when he came on, he at least showed something. I think there was a graphic where he had 5 touches in the box, which was the most that any United player had, and that's just when he came on like 10 minutes later. So it just shows the attacking intent we had in the game. It's such a strange one because I'm going to go rewatch the 90 minutes before I start properly giving mad opinions on it, because everyone's going to be really reactionary right now, especially going into the international break. Now we're not going to see Man United play for the next 2 weeks. So all we're going to have is questions about Erik ten Hag, if he's the guy, like going straight back to square one. And United didn't need this. It's how we bounce back from this. It's how we look going forward. If United now, we have Southampton away next, if we don't start putting in a run of performances with wins, it's going to be, I'm not saying Ten Hag's going to get sacked, but he's probably got until Christmas for people to start thinking, okay, what's going on? Like, we wanted to back you here. I don't think he's going to get sacked because I don't think we'll be this bad until Christmas. But right now, this loss doesn't help. We really needed to kind of win this game, and we didn't at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to, as you say, Zach, is going to really add pressure to Ten Hag. And I think I said at the time, and I think a lot of Man U fans come back with the injuries argument, but I did feel back then that win against City in the final maybe papered over the cracks, because all season long there was all talk about Ten Hag being sacked. Man U fans are constantly talking about the fact that there was no sort of game plan, there was no sort of no sort of identity with their style of play. And I'm looking at it now, albeit the first 3 games, looking at the Brighton game and all that kind of stuff, and this game especially, doesn't seem too much. You can't really. You think about Pep style of football, you think about this nice kind of possession kind of football, and Arne Slot so far in the first few games has shown that with us. And you look at old style Jurgen Klopp, more of a gegenpress, more of a pressing kind of play. You look at someone like Sean Dyche or Sam Allardyce, where they're more route one, sort of more defensive kind of football. But I don't know what Ten Hag's kind of football is. It's been 4 years at the club. I could be wrong, but I don't recall really seeing what his style of play is. I can't tell you what he wants to play with his team, and it's it's going to increase. And I think to lose a Brighton game as well, I think Southampton on paper is a very easy win because they've not won a single point this season so far. So I think if you come away with that game with a loss or draw, I think that's going to add even more pressure. So where do you stand on Ten Hag? Because he has been someone under pressure for a lot of time, but the final win seemed to really just ease the pressure, and it seemed to just almost winning back the fans. I think trophies always do. But do you think he'll go on? Do you think he stays for long term, or do you think, as you said, get to Christmas time, it gets shaky, then the question gets asked again?
I think he stays for long term. I was one of those people that wanted to keep Ten Hag, not because of our performances last season. I feel like with Ten Hag, we were very unlucky with injuries, and even so, he done a lot where injuries weren't an excuse anymore. I just wanted to see a Ten Hag team without the injuries, because our first season was something to build up from. We finished in the top 4. We finished with our first trophy in 6 years. It was something to build from, and then we go on to have our worst season ever. Although there was injuries, but we still ended up with a trophy. In regards to Ten Hag and the future, I'm not gonna switch my tune just because we lost to Liverpool and say we need to sack him straight away. But he now has his team. We now have backroom staff. We've now sorted out all the cracks that were off the pitch over summer, and he also come in and really sorted that. We've had a good transfer window with the people we've got rid of and the people that we've brought in. If we don't start seeing a consistent style of football and wins on the table, I think he does go. I think he has until Christmas to do that at least. I don't think he's going to get sacked any chance before Christmas. I feel like if it's really bad behind Christmas, I feel like any of us will look at this and be like, okay, we just literally have to pull the plug and we have to start this again. But I'm a firm believer of they had their candidates and they thought, you know what, let's just give Ten Hag the right environment. Because the whole style of play thing, I totally get it from the neutral perspective. Like, as a United fan and someone that's been obsessed with United, I kind of see what Erik ten Hag's trying to do. But unfortunately, we've not done it on a consistent basis. And the neutral are right in a sense that if you can't perform specific styles of play and specific patterns of play consistently, no one's going to really say you have a style of play. So I totally get why people say that. But it's some of the personnel. Like, prime example today, I was explaining to people why Ugarte will be much better than Casemiro. Not because I feel like Ugarte is a much better footballer than Casemiro, but Casemiro came in to this Man United team. Man United have always had a bad number 6 for years. We haven't really replaced Michael Carrick, and Michael Carrick stopped playing football years ago. So when we signed Casemiro, we thought, okay, we're going to get, even though it's short term, it's a short term fix, we're going to get somewhat of the Casemiro we saw that won 5 Champions League. Unfortunately, with that Casemiro, his job was to win the ball back and pass the football to the better footballers with Kroos and Modric. But unfortunately, he came into Man United's team, and his midfielders were Eriksen and Bruno in his first season. And looking at that, he was like, "Oh, I'm better than these guys." So if you remember the first goal, the first time ball that Casemiro tried, he loves that. That's something that he's discovered in his Man United career, because he never really used to do that at Real Madrid, because Real Madrid would be fuming trying to do those line breaking passes. And Casemiro's loved that. It's worked in the first season with a few occasions. Like, he would do it to the back post and Rashford would be on the end of it and we would get a goal. But you can't be doing that if you're not good at it. And that was never Casemiro's game. Not once did anyone say during his Real Madrid tenure and at his prime that he was really good at line breaking passes. So I think with Ugarte, he'll win the ball back on a better rate than Casemiro, and Ugarte will keep it simple. We now at least have 2 midfielders that will keep the ball simple in Mainoo and Ugarte, which United haven't had because even though if we play with Bruno doesn't keep the ball simple. He always wants the Hollywood ball. Casemiro, even though that's his job as a 6, he doesn't do that either. So I feel like with Ugarte, there might be a difference. We might get what we thought we were supposed to get with Casemiro, and someone that's going to win the ball back and pass it to the better players. If that happens, I then feel like, you know what, we might start to see United try to keep the ball more and try patterns of play that no one gets to see, because when you have people like Bruno and Casemiro in the midfield who are always, 1, roaming around, 2, don't have the legs to roam around, and 3, always want to move the ball as quickly as possible without thinking what's the best option, you can't build from that midfield. So that's why I thought it was really key to get Manuel Ugarte. That's just my theory of watching Casemiro for 2 years now and watching Ugarte and thinking, okay, this is the different types of profiles and players. But if it doesn't work, then Ten Hag's in trouble. So I wish the international break didn't happen now, but maybe it's the best chance because Rasmus Højlund will be back, Luke Shaw's looking to be back around the international break, and Ugarte will be fit. So then if we keep a fit squad and we start to go on a run games now, I feel like no one will complain. But Brighton, we were unlucky. Liverpool, we were just outclassed today. So it's not the end of the world, and I'm not willing to sack Ten Hag straight away, but we need to start seeing results as soon as possible.
Yeah, 100%. I think, as I said before, start of the next game. I think he should win that game, but the way it's gone so far, you just never know. But I do think that, given the injury he had, 2 weeks off may do the team a world of good. Now, I wanted to talk as well, really sort of a way to sort of praise and sort of also criticise another player. But before we do that, I mean, you mentioned it then about the fact that second goal killed off. And I think that's such a big key thing from last year, because last year, both the FA Cup and League game within the month or two of each other at Old Trafford, we go 1-0 up and we can't seem to finish the game and get that second goal. And that's what ultimately caused you guys to get back in the game. So I'm just so pleased that this year, with a new manager who's got massive shoes to fill and slot from Jurgen Klopp, I'm just so glad that we actually managed to get that job done and get the second goal, because I could have easily seen it. You saw Man U get chances when it was 3-0, have a few saves from Alisson were forced in the second half, and that's 1-0. That could have been a completely different game. Man U could have easily scored one of those chances, especially Xerxes' chance. If that was 1-0, get to 1-1, you probably earn a draw and maybe even sneak a win. We all saw what happened at Goodison Park. So I'm just, from players who, Diaz especially, who for me last year was guilty a lot of times of missing too many chances. So far this season, he's been electric. If you take away the one chance he missed against Ipswich, he's been so clinical in front of goal. And for me, I'm not going to ever say anything too early, because it is only 3 games in. But from what I'm seeing so far from this Liverpool team on the slot, it's really, really impressive. The style of play is different, but it's really fun to watch. And it may even be just a thing of just it's a new voice or a new face to sort of be coached by. But I just think that for me, it's signs that we're making improvements and the players have learned their lessons, because last year was too many games where this happened. Man U, I can't think that a lot of shots in all of those games we played, whether it's the League Cup, whether it's the FA Cup or the Premier League. There's so many chances wasted, and I believe it was something as crazy as 90 shots in 3 games. That could be completely incorrect stats, but if that is true and to not win any of those 3 games, it's crazy in my eyes. So for me, I was so glad to see how clinical we were. We actually took away our chances, which was a big problem, especially late on in the season, in the final few months of Klopp's tenure. Gravenberch, I really want to praise. Diaz and Salah, excellent. I mean, Diaz was brilliant from start to finish. Salah looks back to his best. But Gravenberch, for me, really stood out. I mean, Mainoo had a tough time, and that was largely down to Gravenberch. He would often win the ball back for Liverpool. He'd drive the team forward. And for me, this is a guy that really, we never saw that really enough last year, through a mixture of lack of form and lack of playing time. And, he had showed promise in a couple of games early on, particularly the Europa League. You saw he could be a player, and there's obviously a reason why Bayern Munich, had him on their books. And for me, he's been as number 6. This is the position where we were trying to get Zubimendi. People were talking about, we can't seem to replace Fabinho. We talked about Caicedo the year before, and we had Endo, but he doesn't seem to be at all a slot kind of player. So there's a lot of questions about the 6 were being asked, and I think so far in the 3 games, the first 2 games you were sort of, it's Ipswich and then Brentford at home. It's not a true test. This was a big test today, away to team's biggest rivals, a team that not even we could beat. Our way, years we won the Champions League and the Premier League, we didn't beat Man U away from home then. So for me, it's a big test. Always is at Old Trafford. Form goes out the window completely at Old Trafford, no matter how each team's playing. And for me, I thought Gravenberch really stood up to the test. I know they gave the man of the match award to Mo Salah, but although actually it was Luis Diaz, not Salah, but I think Gravenberch deserves a huge mention. Really does. I think all round, I think McAllister was good as well, but I think Gravenberch for me was just, we all knew McAllister was good. We all know Diaz is good. We all know Salah's good, but no one really knew whether Gravenberch was even going to stay. There was talk about him leaving in the summer. I think I heard Fenerbahce, Galatasaray, one of the Turkish teams, was heavily linked with him. Obviously, he stayed, and we haven't bought a number 6. And so far, so good. Unbelievable performance by him. And also that Dutch connection with Slot seems to be working a treat right now. But Tony, for you, of course, Mainoo, one of the stars of the last year in English football, a massive rise. He started for England, and he was almost like one of the guys that, I could be wrong on this, but was seen as one of the guys that was almost improving the England team. I think when he came in, I remember just the team looking completely different when he was on the field compared to maybe when he wasn't playing beforehand, when they were playing Trent in that sort of midfield role that Mainoo occupied. But today wasn't his day, was it?
No, it wasn't. I feel like the whole of the Man United midfield struggled. I feel like even Bruno didn't have a great game. Casemiro obviously got hooked at half-time. But Mainoo, who normally is the calm one in this situation, but he's 19 years of age. I'm not worried about him at all. I just don't want to have to rely on him as much. And I want the best for Kobbie Mainoo, because he's clearly a great talent. But for us to bring the best out of him, and we need to surround him with good players. That's one thing I feel like when we wasted the talent of Paul Pogba, for example, we never surrounded Paul Pogba with a good midfield. I don't want to have the same effects with Kobbie Mainoo at the moment. So I really hope it's crazy to think that a lot of today's performance, I don't want to put a lot of today's performance on Casemiro, but you saw the difference when Toby Collier came on. Even though I'm not even praising Toby Collier, but you saw the difference with Casemiro. I feel like with Ugarte and Mainoo, I hope that helps Mainoo in a sense, because Mainoo can win duels, but you want him to be in the best position, because there was times where Mainoo was the deepest midfielder because Casemiro just couldn't pick up the ball in between the lines. And then even when Mainoo done it, and he dribbled out, he was then at fault for the third goal that Mo Salah scored. So I just hope that Ugarte is a nice fit for Mainoo and it makes our midfield look more present in a sense, because I feel like we're still very easy to play against. We're not as compact as we were, even though we started pressing in this 4-2-4 or whatever. I still feel like there's massive gaps in the midfield, and I'm not sure if Ugarte fixes all of that. But one thing I do know is that he's really good at winning the ball back. So at least if we have one midfielder who can win the ball back, Mainoo can win the ball back, for instance, that's at least two, and it relieves the pressure of Mainoo having to do every single facet of the midfield in a sense. So yeah, it's unfortunate because normally he's our star boy and he will be our star boy, but he's only human. He can have a bad game and there's nothing wrong with that because he's 19 years of age. But yeah, just around just fielding better players really, and hopefully getting rid of. I think as long as Man United field the right players and we get rid of some, like it's an overhaul. Rome wasn't built in a day, and you and me, Andy, we watch American sports. We know how long rebuilds can actually take. Like we've only been using this term rebuild in football recently, but for you and I that watch the NFL and I watch basketball as well, like rebuilds don't happen in a year. They really don't. Even though it's just unfortunate that even though Man United are in their first year to rebuild, Erik ten Hag's in his third. So that's the kind of issue where there's a bit of a divide in a sense, because we need to see something from Ten Hag being in his third year in charge, even though Man United as a club are going in a new direction in their first year with Ineos. So that's the only thing that's keeping it a divide at the moment. But I feel like we will be fine. Maybe if in a couple months' time, if we still haven't seen it, then we pull the plug and we panic. But right now, I don't want to overreact.
Yeah, it's early days, isn't it? I mean, it's only three games in, and so many games left. I mean, yeah, you're what 13th, 14th right now, but you know, get a couple of wins in, you'll be back up to the top six. So it's very early days. And I think for Mainoo as well, you have to worry about burnout. I think that we've seen with certain players when they're young, they play too much too early, and when they get to like their mid 20s, I think these days maybe with the way players sort of conduct themselves these days off the field, I do think maybe that won't be as much of a problem. But you can't keep having to rely on a 19, 20-year-old playing every game, because it is just almost too much too early. And I think Ugarte will come in, and I've heard so many good things about him. He was linked with us, I think, a year ago, maybe 18 months ago. And a friend of mine, Greg, shout out to Greg if you are listening, fellow Liverpool fan, he was waxing Liverpool about this guy, constantly saying that we should be buying him. And yeah, from a guy who is a massive Fabinho fan, or was even when he was at Monaco, and the kind of, I think the petition in general, the kind of holding midfielders that win the ball back, I just love watching them play. I could watch those kind of players all day, almost like the Dysons of the team, just hoover up any of the danger. And Kante back in the day, and Rodri's so good at it now. And for me, having albeit watched on the YouTube highlights, he looks a very good player. So I think you getting him in, £50 million these days, which is crazy to say, is probably a bit of a bargain these days. You think about players coming in for more money all the time than that, and you think about Jack Grealish being double the cost and what he's done really at City, not a lot. It's I think that's if he's there for 9-10 years as your main holding midfielder, brings you success on the pitch, then I think it's worth every penny. You think about Van Dijk, £75 million. At the time, it was like, that's ridiculous money. But looking at it now, he was worth probably double that when he was in his prime, losing the Ballon d'Or to Messi by 7 votes. So I think to get him £50 million is pretty good business if he does well. Which I know we said that a lot about Man U players in recent years. You think about all the players you bought since Fergie left with a big reputation. You think of Falcao. You think about Di Maria. More recently, Paul Pogba, and I think there's all these players that have come in with big reputations, having had great seasons abroad, and then they come in and don't do well. So yeah, obviously you never know, a player could not work out, but I think Ugarte, is someone that could be a sort of a team-changing transfer. Now, for you, I want to flip the switch a little bit. As a non-Liverpool fan, what was your view of Liverpool's performance today in terms of how Slot's played, not just this game, but also maybe the first two games? Someone watching over as a non-Liverpool fan, how are you feeling about the Slot, and what's sort of impressing you about the way we've played so far under him?
I'm going to say this with my Man United rose gold tinted glasses here. Like, I was really skeptical of Arne Slot just because, new manager and whatever. But one thing I will say is that Liverpool have always had a good team. And the difference I see from this Liverpool team last year and this one this year is that you're clinical. I feel like the difference between the game Old Trafford, as we alluded to earlier, was that you could probably, the performances were probably identical. I think you maybe even created way more chances last season. But these times when you took the ball from us, it was in the back of the net and you're clinical. And we saw at Ipswich in the first half, it was a bit shaky, but then after the second half, you came out 2 goals clinical. And so I would say that's the one difference I can see. I'm not going to act like I've been watching. I watch Liverpool because I want you guys to lose every single game, but you do look very, very clinical in a sense. I think Klopp's last year, you were creating a load of chances, and it was just like, we need someone to put these chances away. This time now, with like Jota up front, Salah on the right, and who did you play? Diaz on the left as well. On the left as well. I think that's a good mix. I think the fact that you can bring on Nunes and Gakpo is good as well. Like, you've got somewhat of a decent squad that you can bring on. Chiesa as well. We'll see how he adapts to the Premier League and if he's the Federico Chiesa we once knew. But I think the main difference is that this team looks really clinical, and it's not the rock and roll football that you guys were used to with Klopp. But you still press high. You still want to win the ball back, and you can keep it as well, and you can move it really quickly. So I'm quite impressed with Arne Slot so far. I'm not gonna act like it's revolutionary and this is all Arne Slot, because I feel like Liverpool still have at least 4 world-class players, which only one other Premier League team could probably say. Maybe City. Maybe I don't think Arsenal have 4 world-class players. I feel like right now in your team you have 4 world-class players, so that does help. I think it'll help any manager in a sense, but no disrespect or no non-credit to Arne Slot, because he's obviously come in, seen the squad, is doing well, and right now 3 wins from 3 games, you can't complain.
Exactly, not even a goal conceded, which is the most impressive thing. I mean, even last year, you look about the games we were winning and the club, and there was that period where we sort of winning game after game, but there's a lot of games where it was, a really poor first half. Second half, we start getting better, and off the Ipswich game was like that, but the 2 games since it's been anything but. And I think about the last minute winner against Forest, and there was other games where it was a bit of a hard watch. And obviously, you had complete faith in Klopp, and you would still love him to be here, but at the same time, you can't ask anything more than what Slot's done. I mean, first 3 games ever managing in the Premier League. I mean, previous experiences, managing in Holland, and that's not really the most. It obviously is taxing to a certain extent, but it's not like a La Liga or Premier League. He's got no real experience of managing at the top level, and to come in and have that kind of start is, what more can you ask for? 3 points, the 3 games, 3 wins, 9 points, not a goal conceded. Each game scoring at least 2 goals. Unbelievable. And, in a way, you mentioned that you're glad the international break is coming for you. I actually don't want it to come. Playing so well, I kind of want it to carry on. But I think I'm just praying now that we don't have the usual thing we have of players going away on international duty, they get injured or anything like that. And yeah, that's my worry. But again, you just can't ask for anything more. And and to someone that spent all my childhood watching Man U win trophy after trophy, to win at 3-0 at Old Trafford is, for me, the perfect way to end the weekend. So yeah, that is, I think, actually a nice way to end the podcast here. So that has been our Liverpool against Man U review with myself, Andy Davis, and Toni Afoke. Tony, thanks for coming on today.
Thanks for having me. I was reluctant to do that after the performance, but yeah, it's good to get some things off my chest.
And as mentioned before, first of all, pleasure having you on. As usual, you've been on my NFL podcast a few times before, and it's always good having you on. And of course, I mentioned at the start, you do work for TalkSPORT, and you did do a lot of work in the summer at the Euros. What's sort of on the horizon for you in sort of the football world? What have you got to look forward to in the next few months?
I've been thinking about the Club World Cup for next year, but that's about next year. But yeah, just getting on in the season. And I did say if Man United start playing well, I will go to more Man United games, because last year, it's funny, I've been beefing with Man United for the past year. Last year, I told myself that I wasn't going to go to a single United game and I only went to one, but that's because I was like in Manchester and I was kind of forced to. I think that was me what's the word, positioning not to watch Man United in a sense, because I just knew we were going to have a bad season. But I feel like I will watch some more Man United games. The NFL is back next week, so that's what I'm looking forward to. And the NBA is coming back soon as well. So, yeah, you'll just see me try and maybe go into a few more Man United games and trying to rekindle my love for the club.
Amazing stuff. So, of course, if you are watching this podcast or listening to it, don't forget, if you can get the chance, to follow Tony on TalkSPORT. If you like your football content or other sports content, he is the guy for you. So go check him out. But in the meantime, we are going to end it here. We are going to bring you back next week. It's a bit of a special episode. We are doing, once again, with Tyrese, our starting 11 episodes. This will be a bit of a different one. It's going to be our starting 11 based on the greatest goals scored by Liverpool players. So, for example, you could have Gerrard against West Ham FA Cup final 2006 alongside Emre Can against Watford in midfield. But that will come more next week, as we are in now the international break. And we will be back the following week to review our game against Nottingham Forest. And of course, if you are new to this podcast, don't forget to follow it, like, subscribe on YouTube, share the word. In the meantime, we'll see you guys next time. Out the Red Men.